Hey, James W. Falcon here, and welcome to this segment, this third segment in my brand new video series, Inspiration Management. I want to invite you to review the previous segments so that you'll know exactly where we are in this process. But as outlines go, the first segment we covered the definition of inspiration. The second segment we covered the mapping process of inspiration. And in this particular segment, we're going to use a title called Being Familiar with the Flow to talk about, some individual aspects of inspiration's flow. Listen, if inspiration were a person, she or he has some specific character and personality traits. If inspiration were a person, we would notice that inspiration, he or she, would do certain things. There's a uniqueness to our individual inspirational flow, if you will. Things happen in certain orders, or things are delivered in a particular way. And how your inspirational flow is may be quite different from mine, because I truly believe it's divinely inspired, given as a gift, and it's something that's fitted uniquely with who we are and how God built and created us. So it's personal, and it's very, very uniquely designed for each of us as individuals. So when you think about these personality traits, when you think about these nuances, you'll come to some specific conclusions. Number one, you'll have a comfort level in knowing that when inspiration calls, gives, knocks, rings the doorbell, or however it's your time to jump into the river's flow, you'll know, yeah, you know what, yeah, that makes sense. But then there are other times where if inspiration were a person, she or he might totally blow your mind and come to you in a completely different way, using different methods and tactics. And you have to be aware of that, sensitive to that. But what you do with it should still be something that's been born out of some kind of systemic or methodology of some sort, right? Some kind of a systemic approach. In either case, it's important that you know these things. So, a few notes that I want to share in this whole process. For me, let me just use myself briefly for the poetry portion of who is James W. Falcon. Over these last 5, 6, 7 years, one of the things that I've noticed as I've written poetry is that I'll get a download of some kind of a rhythm. I'll hear a certain rhythm. And then I can get a download, a separate download oftentimes, of a flow of words, of verbiage, of, words strung together, maybe individual words, maybe sentences or phrases of some sort. So I'll get the rhythm or beat, and then I'll sometimes get from inspiration, I'll get a series of words, and sometimes the two may be separate and remain separate. And then oftentimes I'm blessed enough where I'll get that flow of words with the rhythm, with the rhythm. And it's always interesting. So if I get the flow of words without the rhythm, then I'll do my diligence. And I'm going to talk to you about this in future segments. I'll record what I get, and then I'll wait for inspiration to give me the second portion. And if I don't get it, I'll pursue that myself. So I have to do something myself in that process, and vice versa. And that's really important for you to know what happens. I can record certain points in time in my lifetime as a writer, as a poet, that I've gotten downloads of entire poems or books where I get both. And it's a blessing each and every time when that happens. It's also something that takes place if I were to use who I am as a public speaker. Sometimes I have situations when I have to go somewhere to speak or to do something as a preacher, as a religious leader. I may get an entire public speech or sermon I may get that public speech or sermon with or without little jokes and analogies and object lessons. Or I could get that speech or sermon with those jokes and object lessons. So sometimes I get it in whole, sometimes I get it in part. If I get it in part, I make sure that I go and I pursue the other portion because I need a whole speech or sermon as the end product. James W. Falcon here. I just have to tell you, I am so thrilled and excited that I get a chance to be in front of you for these segments because this has been on my heart and mind to develop and deliver for almost about 2 to 3 years. So welcome to these video series segments, and stay with me for more inspiration management coming your way in just a bit. Take care.